comes around, the talk around the town is what happened on the weekend in the Footy. Monday nights, we're talking Footy. Monday nights, we're talking Footy.
Hello and welcome to Talking Footy. We're back in season 2014. The footy's back and that is fantastic. It's even better to be sitting alongside two out-and-out legends of the game of AFL football. Tim Watson, a three-time premiership champion with the Essendon Football Club, one of the greatest players ever in Essendon history. Welcome to you, Watto.
Thanks, Dan. It's great to be here. I'm looking forward tonight to talking to Duck and yourself about Jack Revolt. I know we're only into round one, but I'm really keen to talk about where is it best placed, or where's Richmond best placed to play Jack Revolt? Is it deeper or is it further up the ground? I mean, after Saturday night, I'm just concerned about where they think he's at.
You've got some strong thoughts on Jack Revolt. We're going to prize that out of you very shortly, Watto. The King is next to you, the greatest player in the history of the game, if you don't mind. Hello, Duck.
The expansion teams have arrived, Tim. I think, so exciting to see both of those sides win on the weekend. One of them has, and I wasn't for the expansion sides. I thought Tasmania, I thought they made a mistake. I thought Tassie should have been first. They went ahead, put a side in the Gold Coast in Greater Western Sydney. Gold Coast have got the best player in the competition, and Greater Western Sydney, I think, have got the best forward ever to play the game. I think he'll become the best forward ever to play the game in Jeremy
Cameron. Best forward ever to play the game, says the King.
Ever to play the game.
Gee, that's a big statement.
We'll have a look later. We'll see how he's tracking. He's a long way ahead of, well, everyone.
You've already had some big statements already this round on the Collingwood Football Club. You said they played bruise-free footy in round one. I want to find out, if you've got an issue with Nathan Buckley, you've loaded up the gun again tonight. I'm going to ask you directly, Duck. Have you got a problem with him? We'll find out very shortly about your thoughts on the Collingwood Football Club. But we might start with Carlton. Yeah. Well, and I know you've got some doubts about Dale Thomas's health and his fitness after round one.
Well, we heard so much over the pre-season about Dale Thomas and about his ankle, and medical people were saying that there were real concerns about him getting back to his absolute best. Now, we've only seen a small sample so far of what he's capable of doing, but I just want to show you some vision from last night. This is just about the power through his ankle at the moment. Now, we know that he probably still lacks some conditioning, but he wasn't that far out, and he's closer in this time. He kicked, his efficiency at the weekend was 44%. Now, between 2013, he was kicking at 68%. So that just gives you an indication of where he's at right now in terms of his ability to be able to be anywhere near his best.
Well, he is a beautiful kick normally, as you said. 68% is quite high in the AFL, but both of those kicks trailed off at the end, didn't they? And they had no penetration whatsoever. So you'd have to think there's a small problem.
You know, the other thing about this, and it's something that probably we haven't explored enough in the off-season with the Dale Thomas move to Carlton, and that is, did they really need a Dale Thomas more than they needed a key forward or a key defender? You look at what happened to them last night, and I think they just ran out of gas in the end. But they still didn't look that potent up forward. And then when they shifted Henderson, they looked really... Well, he didn't start in defence, they looked suspect down there. They had a shift in there, and then they still didn't look too good at the other end of the ground.
Wade started OK, took a big mark, but then drifted out of the game. Henderson, like you said, he was quiet. Look, Daisy Thomas, as we said, it's only round one, but he doesn't look 100% fit to me.
Well, one of the leading sports medicos in this town is Dr. Rowan White, and he had this to say about the health and the future of Dale Thomas.
Jury's still out on this one. I think we need to see how Dale Thomas is going to pull up over the next 4 to 6 weeks of football. If he gets through that, I think that's a very good sign for Dale for his future. If, however, he breaks down again, I think the signs are fairly bleak.
And if he breaks down again, the signs are fairly bleak, says Dr. Rowan White. 22 other Carlton players had off-season surgery. Is that going to be an issue for Carlton? That's half the list as the season progresses.
Well, look, it's probably too early to say, but what we do know about football is that anybody that talks about their pre-season, they say they've had the best pre-season they've ever had in their lives, they're fitter than they've ever been before, and it sets you up for a great year. Now, already Mick has talked, he put it on the agenda last night about how many players had operations in the off-season, so I guess it is a concern internally how quickly they can get those blokes back, how quickly they can get them to peak fitness, and of course, you know, they went away as well at the end of last year, did their altitude training, and they copped terrible weather overseas.
We're playing catch-up all year, aren't you? If you you have a bad pre-season, you realise the training during the week to catch up on your fitness, and you can't do that.
You're chasing your tail.
You've put teams in the AFL into two camps. Explain what you're on about here.
Well, I've got the heat teams and I've got the altitude teams. I want us to keep an eye on this throughout the course of the year because there's been a debate raging about what's best. Do you do the heat training or do you do the altitude training? And the new gurus are saying let's do the heat training. I don't know whether you can do a combination. Maybe you can go to the altitude training and during the heat. I don't know whether you can do that. But Collingwood did the heat training.
I've got an idea.
What is it?
How about you just do some hard training? Hey? I mean, that's exactly what Port Adelaide have done over the last 2 years, and you saw what they did to Carlton yesterday. I mean, they were unbelievable, purely off the back. And we put them in the heat training because they trained in Adelaide and it was 40 for most of the time. And
this is what the Blues copped,
Carlton.
Yeah, this is what they copped when they went over there. I don't know whether or not this has helped.
Well,
what they were there to
unless
achieve.
They've got a couple of snowboards, I don't think that's going to help a lot.
That is extraordinary vision, that, and we are having a bit of a joke, but they went over to America in the coldest snap in North American history, and apparently they didn't book the indoor stadium. So this is what they've done. This is ridiculous. They've got goggles, masks, training in 6 inches of snow.
Yeah, they had to wear night vision to get through the train. The same thing happened with Essendon, though, too. Like, they went over there and that disrupted what they'd hoped would be, a great sort of 2.5 weeks over there.
I think most of these trips, and if you talk to the scientists about it, and they talk about you get a very small percentage, but you have to do it year after year after year. I mean, what they probably got out of that more was the closeness of being away, and probably had to cuddle one another to stay warm.
It's a change. Rules have changed, Duck, and there's a cap now at 120. And it's interesting in the round, we're talking about Carlton, interrupted pre-season, players coming back from surgery. How can you explain that they, so far, have had the least number of interchanges?
I find it difficult to explain, actually, given the way that game was played last night as well. I've talked to other people in footy today about it, and they don't believe that they've altered their plans that drastically with the interchange cap. So it seems to me that maybe they'll creep up a bit. We know that Mick Malthouse was one coach who really exploited the whole salary cap, the interchange cap initially at Collingwood, and they were firing those fresh darts all the time.
Well, I think there was only the 3 clubs on the weekend that had more than 100. So tells you that probably wasn't a problem to start with.
If you keep the better players on the ground longer, it's only going to be good for the fans.
I hope the game swings back to that and you see the best players more often. Hey, match review panel have been called into play early. Andrew Walker had a couple of incidents looked at. He has been suspended for 1 match if he accepts that charge for this rough conduct. Not smart, Duck?
No, just silly, wasn't it? And, I mean, it's dangerous. I don't think he really meant to hurt him, but that's just stupid. When you get close to the fence, shouldn't be doing anything like that. So probably deserves what he got.
Yeah, he might have been a bit lucky on the second one. This is a high hit on Justin Westhoff, and all clear on this one?
Yeah, well, they would have slowed this down frame by frame, and they would have been satisfied that he actually had his eyes on the ball there and he was attempting to make a spoil. And
for all the supporters out there, and that's what we are, we're supporters, we watch the game, I think there'd be some confusion already. Yeah. I mean, how the one, OK, that's rough contact when you throw someone into a fence, but how that one gets off, I mean, let's track this during the year because I'm sure there'll be inconsistencies, and that's what we don't want. And it started already.
OK, that should be the precedent then, shouldn't it, for a spoil and head-high contact?
Well, we had a precedent last year with Lindsay Thomas on Reed with the bump. He went past the ball.
Let's not go back to it. Well, let's start afresh.
OK, start afresh. We'll start with that one then.
Well, 12 months ago, Port Adelaide were the great story in the game. They came from 14th on the ladder all the way to 5th last year. Some doubts in people's minds, including mine, as to whether or not they're going to be able to back it up. And they did it in great style. Let's talk about them for a minute. And their last quarter dominance, boys, was just extraordinary. They run over the top of teams consistently. 7 goals to 1 in the last quarter. And you're looking at a very, very fit side there. Well,
you are. And as I said, off the back of a very hard pre-season last year, so they've got a real base there. But these kids, I mean, they got a lot of belief from last year. Let's not forget they beat Collingwood in a final, took Geelong right to the wire. Yeah. So, this is a confident footy side, confident in their bodies, confident they can run out a game, and that's exactly what they did.
They're a good balance of a side too. I think they've got really good, smart midfielders, young midfielders, and then they've got their forward. Westhoff was good last night, and of course they've got a good rebounding defence too.
Yeah, the numbers in the last quarter you can see on the screen there are unbelievable. That is as big a domination as you could probably ever get.
That becomes a real psychological weapon though for a group of players, doesn't it? Like we've all played footy, you know that if you think you can take a side, it's an amazing effect that comes over that group.
And I think the pleasing thing for that, as you said, a young group, but there were ebbs and flows in that game. Let's not forget, I know we can be a little bit critical of Carlton and they've had a bad pre-season in terms of injuries and everything else, but they had times where they dominated in that game. Port Adelaide then had the confidence in the last quarter to really go on with it. I mean, that's a real strength.
They've got a very good coach too, boys, and you speak about the psychological thought that you're fitter and you're stronger. Have a listen to Ken Hinkley speaking after the game.
Well, 100% honest, we're just a great running team. Teams know that. Teams know they're going to play against a hard-running Port Adelaide. We're going to be a hard-running team, and we're going to make it a tough day. If you come and play against Port Adelaide, you're going to run. and you're going to have to run really hard for 4 quarters.
I love that. You play against us, good luck. You're going to have to run your legs off. They are an incredibly fit side. I believe 6 of their runners, David King was talking about it on the coverage last night, that 6 of their runners are the best runners in the competition. There's a bit of aura about it.
Yeah, that's a good message to send out to the rest, even if they're not.
Yeah. You start believing.
I love Ken Hinkley, but isn't it amazing? 12 months ago he gets the job. He would have never said that. All of a sudden he's grown in confidence too in his job.
That's a good point.
A young Port player caught your eye, had a great first up season. Whatever, you thought he was fantastic again last night?
Ollie Wines is just a super young talent. Now, you've got to remind yourself all the time that you're looking at a kid who's only playing his second year of footy. He did with poise and strength, and you just sort of wonder, how good might he be in another couple of years?
I'm going to steal Bruce's line. This kid is special. Right. He is really, really special.
And he kicked goals
and
too.
There's no 2-year blues here. And you're right about the goals. I mean, they were crunch goals where they had to kick. It was when Carlton had the flow of the game. He went back and nailed them.
Jared Pollock's a new player from the Brisbane Lions. He wanted to go home to Adelaide. It was a win for Port Adelaide. Normally, players historically have chosen the Adelaide Crows. They got him, and he looked good too.
The other thing I really was impressed with this kid last night, I reckon the best quarter of footy he played last night was the last quarter. When the game was on the line, and a couple of balls had to be won, like that one right there, in the middle, and I'd always been led to believe that this kid might be more of an outside player. He can run and carry the ball, and he's got a nice left foot kick, as we see here. But his work inside was really impressive last night too, so that just adds to a band of young midfielders that is already impressive.
Another good user.
Yep. The opening game of the year was Collingwood and Fremantle. The Pies got smashed to the tune of 70 points. Where are Collingwood at? They've lost a lot of premiership players in the last 12 months. Heath Shaw's gone, we know. Alan Didak's gone, Darren Jolly. A lot of list turnover. Where are their side at? Well, Gary Pert, the CEO, was on radio on the weekend, and he's pretty confident about the next 3 years.
Like I said, we've got very high expectations of success in finals and at least a premiership in the next 3 years.
So Purdy says at least a premiership in the next 3 years. Now, you have had a big go over the weekend at the Pies.
A big go.
You've had a crack. No, you said they play bruise-free footy. You wrote an article on The Age loading up the gun at Collingwood. Have you got an issue with Nathan Buckley?
I certainly haven't. I've got the utmost respect for Nathan Buckley as a footballer, as a person, as a coach. I don't know what he's like as a coach, obviously, but from afar, I sit back and I wrote these words. And look, Dennis Pagan used to say to us all the time, Tim, and you know Dennis very well, and he didn't care whether we liked him, but we had to respect him. And basically what I wrote in that article was, we'll find out whether the players respect Bucks. They don't have to like him, but as long as they play for him. Right now, in the first quarter, by the way, at quarter time, I was sitting there saying, hang on, they respect Nathan Buckley. They played like men possessed. After quarter time, they really did play like Melbourne last year, and that wasn't just a throwaway comment. I wasn't being facetious. I was being honest and saying that I watched Melbourne a lot last year, and it was like, at times, it was like witches' hats where the Fremantle players just played on their own.
I want you to look down that camera, and I want you to say, I have forgiven him for not going to North Melbourne back in the day and going to Collingwood.
Actually, there's a point. Maybe that might be it. We could have had Nathan Buckley at...
Is it personal between you and Bucks? No, we got it.
It is. Bucks and I get along very, very well. Like I said, I respect Nathan Buckley. Would have loved for him to come to the Kangaroos. We might have got another premiership. Yeah, and he might have got one.
Just a little whack on the way. There was an article written in the off-season that I personally thought was a bit over the top. Darren Jolly left the club in not great form and used that word.
Now that is disrespectful. That is disrespectful coming from a guy that was given another opportunity and won a premiership at that club. I don't like seeing that. I don't like seeing that from ex-players or anyone. That to me is sour grapes.
Yeah. That was in relation to him not sitting down and telling him face-to-face that he had no future, or not being able to say to him directly
but you shouldn't say that in the media.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's something that you need to address man-to-man.
What are you there on Friday night? Are the Collingwood midfielders big enough? We see all of the tall midfielders running around. The next generation of Collingwood midfielders got the right frame and size?
I don't know. On the evidence we saw on Friday night, I think they took the game up in the first quarter to Freo, but after that they really disappeared, and they didn't have the strength, they didn't have the body strength, they didn't have the ability to run and spread. You look at their midfielders, there's Pendlebury, Swan, Ball, Beams and Adams. I mean, Adams quite a small midfielder by comparison to some of the more modern-day midfielders. I just put up another graphic here of some of the other midfielders. I talk about Ollie Wines. Ollie Wines is a really big kid. He's 187.94. Cripps, the young boy that's just been drafted to Carlton, Carlton.
You're taking a couple of kilos off that middle bloke there, Watson?
No, well,
92, 93
I
kilos?
went walking with him yesterday, and he said he's down to, what is he, 94? He said low 90s. Kenny's a big midfielder, money. I mean, they're big body players. And, you know, we're down on the ground often, and you're standing next to these blokes, and you marvel at how big they actually are. And I think it's sort of one of the new phenomena of modern-day football, getting those big midfielders around the stoppages.
One of the big-bodied midfielders, Dane Swan, a super consistent player, still found 27 possessions on the weekend, but at times he looked a little lame. That sometimes is the case, just his gait that he runs around with. Not sure whether or not he has got something wrong. Our man Tom Brown was out on the town. He's had a big day today, Tom, and he caught up with Dane Swan.
Just briefly, mate, there was some talk over the weekend that perhaps you might have had a little bit of a twinge in the old hammy. Is it okay?
Yeah, no, I'm fine, mate.
100%?
100%.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah, no.
100%.
Is he... Doug, I haven't got any tattoos. You've got tattoos. Do tattoos drag you down after a while? Can you have too many tattoos on your legs before they start to weigh you down?
No, you're tougher if you've got a tattoo, Timmy. You know
I know that.
That one, he did look a little bit lame on that last kick, and he is tough, Dane Swan. We're not suggesting anything else. Hey, take a little bit of a look at Fremantle. They were absolutely awesome, and there's a bit of vision you want to show.
Well, they were great, Darcy, and if you have a look at this little bit of vision, it shows why I made the reference to Bruce Free Footy. As you look at a kick out here, and look at the space that the Fremantle player finds. I mean, that is... you just don't find that sort of space in today's footy. And then on to Ballantyne, which is in just as much space. And then both Collingwood players overcommit, goal. And that didn't happen once. I mean, that happened 3 or 4 times. And I think the one that really caught my eye when it was just after that particular goal was the one that Crowley ended up marking at the top of the square, unattended. And it went all the way down the ground. You know, chip, 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 and then to the top of the square. So they were just brilliant, by the way.
They were number one at the weekend for scoring from kick-ins, 31%.
Which is through the roof. Unbelievable.
A lot better than what they were last year.
But that tells you that Collingwood didn't set up properly. Their structures were obviously poor, and
they didn't adjust during the game either.
That's exactly right.
They had some issues with Michael Johnson, who was an All-Australian defender in 2013. He's played that role to perfection, but I couldn't work out how he was allowed just to waltz around and do this uncontested possession. I think Tyson Goldsack was sent to him at one stage, but he just didn't get near him enough, and he set up the game for me from back there.
Yeah, 10 interceptions at the weekend. So, I mean, really, he was a stumbling block for the Magpies, and I think... I think when you play against Fremantle, you've got to try and give them what they don't want. What they actually do want is Michael Johnson playing that role. It's easier said than done because you've got to change the way you want to play as well. But after a while, it became apparent that he was going to be somebody that they were going to have difficult bypassing all night.
Well, there are a few players in the competition that you don't let play that loose fellow. Hodge is one of them, and Johnson's the other.
Are Fremantle better this year than last year?
Oh, it's only round one, but they've certainly started where they left off.
I think they are because they've got a fit Sandilands, and he wasn't fit at any stage last year.
And Pavlich.
And Pavlich as well. That's true too. So I think they are fitter, and they're going to be, as they were last year, they're going to be one of the hardest sides to play against week in, week out. And we talked about it post-game about it's a stress test when you play them because any part of your game that's not working properly, they will reveal for you.
Hey, we're live, we're interactive. You can get involved in our Twitter. Our handle is @TalkingFooty. What Duck would love some feedback. Personally, I'll be up for it. You might want to have to talk about Watto's glasses. He's got some new glasses on tonight.
I'm sick of people asking me whether I've had a hair restoration. I haven't.
You haven't?
It's natural.
Any Botox or anything?
No, I haven't.
I was about to say your head.
We're live and we're going to be talking footy right throughout season 2014.
I'm going to get one too.
Dermot Brereton as the best centre-half forward in the game. Plus, did the GWS Giants dodge the biggest bullet in the history of AFL trades? All that and more coming up on Talking Footy.
We're talking footy.
The disappointing thing from us was probably our second-tier mids that didn't stand up. You know, I probably thought I'd get more out of Reece Conker and Brandon Ellis today, but unfortunately they just didn't quite lift their game to the standard that was required. But overall, key forwards were relatively poor. I thought, Jack was well below his best, as was Ty Vickery.
Yeah, welcome back to Talking Footy. Not often coaches individualise players in the press conference. Brandon Ellis, Reece Conker, not good enough, and Jack Riewoldt, Ty Vickery. Tim and Doug, that's pretty strong.
That was rare to hear
Very
that
unusual.
from a coach, and it's always been that you criticise privately and you praise publicly, but I just wonder whether that was calculated on his behalf. I'm sure, and you know, and you does too, that coaches say worse things than that behind closed doors. But generally that's where it stays. Maybe he thinks that, OK, we've got this open policy, we've been talking about all this feedback between players and coaches, and it's OK to get out there now and just say, or tell it as it is.
How would they be feeling, those players right now?
I was going to say, the guys we're talking about, if you said, if it is calculated and you thought, OK, I know how to give these guys a little bit of a kick in the bottom and get them going, then that's OK if they can handle that. Obviously, some players wouldn't handle that. They'd go into their shell and get upset. Now, we're about to talk about a bloke called Jack Riewoldt. Now, he hasn't handled criticism in the media or from anyone for that matter. So for Hardwick to say publicly, you know, he hasn't had a great game, I mean, that's a pretty big statement.
Yeah, and I think on Jack, you know, like I like Jack. You know, we've all met Jack. He's a really personable bloke. I think he's good for the game because he's a real character. But I think Jack has to stop worrying about what people might think of him and what the media might say of him. And I heard other Richmond players talk about, you know, there's been a lot of criticism of Jack. OK, he got taken out of the leadership group. He's not the first bloke that's been taken out of a leadership group. What he needs to understand is that people will have opinions about the way he plays. More specifically, though, I think in terms of the way they play Jack, I don't reckon they're now playing Jack the way that best suits Jack or the team. Now, there's a difference between just Jack being allowed to play the way he wants to play for Jack's own good. Now I don't think they're playing Jack the way that actually is going to make them a better team.
I agree. Damien Hardwick made the comment about a year ago, it was last year actually, he said, we don't want Jack to kick as many goals, we want to share it around. Well, I tell you what, Damien, it's working because he's not kicking as many goals and he's not getting the ball. I mean, I agree with you, Tim. I mean, they went to him 3 times inside the forward 50. They have to use him better. He's not an endurance athlete. He's a power athlete. He uses his body well. Jack Riewoldt, if he's playing in the senior side, has to play in the forward 50. Simple as that.
Tim, you were pretty strong today about Jack. Do you think he likes the theatre? Do you think he maybe is sooking a bit? Is that, too strong?
I think he wears his heart on his sleeve, Jack. And I think that he... You know, like last year, I reckon what he was trying to do, he went too far the other way. I think they said, look, you've got to be more unselfish in the way you play. So we saw these ridiculous kicks from him when he should have been going back and having a shot for goal. It was almost like he had to overcompensate, and I think he did that deliberately. I think what we all want to see is Jack getting back to his absolute best, but I really think for the benefit of the team, that's within about 40 metres of goal. Jack hasn't got the athleticism, he hasn't got the speed to go on a long lead. All the defenders just catch him on a long lead. I spoke to Dustin Fletcher today about blokes that, you know, are difficult to play on. And he mentioned Jack Riewoldt because he said Jack reads the ball so quickly in the air that he positions himself right, but he can only do that, Duck, as you did, as a deeper forward.
As a forward, I agree.
The Tigers were bunkered down today. Tom Brown went to Punt Road Oval and caught up with a few of the boys in question.
Obviously, it was a disappointing performance on the weekend. Have you sort of taken it hard?
Sorry, I've got to get in there. I've got a meeting soon.
Do you take those sort of comments to heart?
No comment, mate.
Not a lot to say to Tommy. Yeah, he had a tough day out there, Tommy, but fair enough. The boys, Ty Vickery was the last man we spoke to.
Yeah. You were very critical of Ty Vickery during the commentary on Saturday night. I thought he had a tough night, Watto. And what was he doing wrong, Dust?
He was behind consistently, looking for the ball out the back, and Stephen May had an absolute field day, had a record number of spoils in a one-on-one contest, which that's okay, but he also marked the ball uncontested. And, you know, I think, you know, Ty, he was the leading target. They went to him 14 times. They went to Ty Vickery more than anyone else in the round so far. Jack Riewoldt was a target on 3 occasions. I think they got the balance wrong, but I think he had to work out himself and say, hey, you know what, the ball's dropping short. I can't get outmarked again and just be crazy determined to make sure the ball went to ground. It wasn't his best night.
Exactly. He seemed to get caught there, didn't he? I mean, he ran back with the flight. He didn't know whether to go for the mark or go front and square. Well, if you can't make the mark, get front and square. At least be in a position where you can get the ball, not standing under the pack doing nothing.
You're the only great forward here, except, I mean, Dust was very good on occasion. But where would you be playing Jack Riewoldt? If you've got Vickery and you've got Riewoldt, where would you be playing them?
Oh, it's pretty simple. Jack Riewoldt would be playing out of the square and Vickery would be obviously at centre half forward doing the hard work up the ground. But like you said, he's just got to compete. He can't ever get outmarked. That's the one thing. Doesn't matter whether there are games where you don't play great. You don't take 10 marks, you don't kick 5 goals. But the simple fact is you have to compete and you can't get marks taken on you. So that's got to be the bare minimum from Vickery.
All credit to the Gold Coast, though, boys. Right. Just sensational. And you run out of superlatives to describe this little man. And I'm not sure where you go with praise, but round one he goes pretty well as well. Have a look at that.
Have a look at his round one stats. He's a fast starter, isn't he? 35, 37, 23, 43, 34, 41. But they reckon that he just sort of goes through the motions a little bit when he trains. He's never been one of the best track horses out there.
Yeah.
But when the real stuff's on, and he gets tagged. This is what we often forget about this bloke.
Are you saying that he's not a hard trainer?
Well, I'm saying that from those that have watched him, they said that he's a reason he
doesn't bother with training too much.
Well,
from what
obviously
really
doesn't.
Not worried about it too much.
Not a big trainer.
No.
Goes out and has 41.
Does anyone get more attention though? Like if you sit down and you're playing against the Gold Coast Suns, you're trying to minimise or stop Gary Ablett this weekend. So it's not as if he's not having the best tagging players thrown at him week in, week out. But he puts up those sorts of numbers. He is just an absolute freak.
There's daylight between him and the next best player, isn't there?
Yeah. Although you've said Cameron might.
If I had, well, we'll talk about that shortly.
He's got a big statement coming on Jeremy Cameron very, very shortly. David Swallow is one of the #1 draft picks at the Gold Coast, who's coming up very, very quickly. You throw in O'Meara. Jack Martin is a very talented young man who got injured pretty badly too. His shoulder is going to keep him out for a long while, we think. But 11 score involvements for David Swallow. He's a good player. Well,
he's a great player. He's a #1 draft pick. And look, he's had a couple of issues. He started, I thought, really well in his career, and then he's just sort of dropped off a little bit. But I think you're right, back to his absolute best on the weekend.
Yeah, I reckon when you're judging players, what you want to be looking at is what they do when the game's in the balance. Yeah. Like if you're talking about good players, you're talking about great players. The great players just find a way of influencing a game when it's in the balance, and that's exactly what he did on Saturday.
At important moments. Yeah. At important moments. I mean, there's so many accumulators in our game. I mean, it's an on-ball game. We know that. There's so many midfielders running through there, and they pick up lots of possessions. But the really, really good players, they know when to get one, and then obviously finish off with goals.
The best result, the most incredible story so far for me is GWS and what they are able to achieve in their win over the Sydney Swans. A bit of news just through. Phil Davis, their centre-half-back's in hospital, a kidney issue, and being treated at the moment. A knock early that they've just picked up. So we hope Phil Davis is going to be okay. Pretty important part of their side. But they were just brilliant. What a win first up.
Well, yeah, look, I was... well, no one gave them a chance, did they? But they were absolutely superb. They're young kids. I mean, the two key forwards, Patton and Jeremy Cameron, they are just superstars. But they're complemented by a lot of very, very, very good players, Darth.
How many first-round picks have GWS had? You wanted to take a look at this?
Yeah, GWS have actually, and you have a look there at the other sides, but GWS have had 22 first-round picks and Gold Coast have had 10. 22 first-round picks, and those guys I mentioned, Boyd, Cameron and Patton, all #1s.
And have a look at that down in the bottom left-hand corner there. They're the premiers, 13, in 13, 12, 11 and 10. And how many first-round picks they had, and they still managed to win a flag. You're talking about 22?
Yep, 22 GWS, 10 Gold Coast.
They're going to be hard to stop.
It's a bit scary, isn't it? The two expansion clubs.
It's a juggernaut and they're coming.
And where they're heading. Jeremy Cameron, you can't wait to get to him. You think he could end up being the best centre-half forward ever? Well,
I'll tell you why, Das. I mean, I loved watching Jonathan Brown. I said the same thing about Jonathan Brown. Now, Jonathan has had a few All-Australians. He's 4-time best and fairest winner of the club, 3-time premiership player. So there's an argument to say that he is anyway. But I love the way he played. But this kid actually takes it to another level. And at the same age, I think is better than all the centre-half forwards that I've ever seen play the game. I never saw Royce Hart at the same age, but I've certainly seen the rest of them. Dermot Brereton, I was only a young kid when he started. But this kid does it all. I mean, he crumbs, he gets handball receives, he takes marks, he runs back with a flight. He's got a little bit of mongrel Das. He's got the whole package. And I honestly believe that in 10 years' time when we're judging him, and he has an injury-free run, unlike Jonathan Brown, who's been cut down, injury-free run, he will be regarded as the best centre-half forward we've seen. Just
saw that graphic there. He's in fine form, isn't he, in the early part of his career. You look at that company that we had him amongst in that graphic, and yourself, Dermot. I'm just trying to think
Jonathan
of
Brown.
Jonathan Brown was, and he's way ahead of you already in terms of goals kicked. And he's probably played in a poorer side than each of you did in your first couple of years as well.
Well, exactly right. I mean, obviously in that side, they go to him a lot, but he is without a doubt. And now with Patton, I mean, that's a combination. And then you think about Boyd coming into that team as well. I mean, they can afford, dare I say it, to give away one of those. Now, it won't be Jeremy Cameron, but they can afford to maybe give away one of those in a few years and pick up some other handy players.
We should give Sauce a bit of a tick and the other people in recruiting GWS, because it's been really clever what they've done. They've gone after all those midfielders and they've decided, OK, if we can't fit them in the midfield, we'll find another position for them. And that becomes part of a really flexible combination of players. And they're all tradable too at the end of the day.
For the record, Duck wanted it known that he started in defence, otherwise he would have been way past after 38 games.
I didn't want to say it.
Our Twitter question, when I ask right now, who will win a flag first and why? GWS or the Gold Coast Suns? Who will win one first?
I think GWS, off the back of. I know that Gold Coast are a very good team right now and starting probably a little bit ahead right now, but I think because of those forwards, Gold Coast don't have.
I'm going for the Suns. I think they're going to be ahead in terms of their midfield. Ablett's still going to be able to play for probably another 2 or 3 years. Bennell didn't play at the weekend. Presti's a much better player than probably people even realise at this early stage. And Swallow, we saw on Saturday night what he's capable of doing. And Jack Martin went off the ground early. So I think they've got a combination of players that can take them all the way.
Yeah, GWS for me. At Talking Footy, get involved in our Twitter handle right now. After the break, did the GWS Giants dodge the biggest bullet in the AFL off-season? And was this weekend just gone the softest start in AFL history?
We'll be 4 points away from the top team.
How about it's Jack Martin's shoulder?
Can I tell you, I get on the treadmill, I can never tell you. I have to check that it's Friday.
No. It's probably not a great time to ask it.
I want our guys to enjoy the win, within reason.
So I'm on a treadmill of training sessions, T1, T2. And
last I looked, I was a senior coach. I'm not too good medically.
No, it's not. No.
You cramping up, Kelly?
And he come on with a sting in his tail and he played like a person who wants to make sure he's not sub.
If you can convince them that they're invincible, it's an art in itself.
You need to drink, you reckon? You're right, big boy?
Do you eventually go mad, Bono? You've been in the chair. Do you lose it eventually?
Of course you do. I just think of there when Leon Cameron said that he wanted the players to enjoy themselves. He obviously wasn't around when Mumford won the flag with the Sydney Swans. What day do you reckon he'll be back?
Hasn't thought that one through, Leon, just yet. First up win. It's going to be Buddy Watch all year, let's be honest. We're going to be talking about him every week here on Talking Footy. He didn't have his best ever game first up. Did GWS dodge a bullet by not recruiting Lance Franklin?
Well, in my opinion, without a doubt. I don't think they need Lance Franklin. They've got, as we've discussed at length already, they've got big forwards, so would have interrupted that. So for me, definitely. And what people have got to remember, they've obviously done this before Sydney. They did it with Barry Hall, and they also did it with Tony Lockett. Big forwards that have gone up there and done very well. Yeah. I think what you have to remember about Sydney, and I'm not potting Sydney at all because they've been very successful in the last 10 years, but the Sydney people are not as passionate about their football. If Sydney are not playing well, they don't go to the footy like we do here. I mean, Melbourne are struggling. The people still go out and watch their team. And I was talking to Wayne Schwass the other day on radio, and he was saying what a bubble that you live in up there. And if all of a sudden, if Buddy doesn't play so well for a few weeks and Sydney lose a few games, all of a sudden the microscope and the pressure on him, will it be too much for him?
Does anyone here think he'll play 9 years?
No.
I don't.
Not even close. Yeah. Not even close. Matthew Lloyd wrote an article on the weekend where he said he thinks Buddy's best form is behind him. I certainly don't think he'll ever reach the heights that he reached in 2008. So if we're going, that's his best, and then Lloyd is probably right.
You got a press release in front of you,
yes.
Tim, some news hot off the press?
Well, I have. It's from the Sydney Swans, and it states that the Sydney Swans can confirm that Lance Franklin's car was involved in an accident a number of weeks ago. There's been a story around about this. Franklin had linked the car to teammate Dan Hanbury. Franklin was not driving, nor was he a passenger in the car. Contrary to media reports, Franklin's car is insured. No one was injured in the incident. The club will make no further comment. We did get a text message from his manager too, Liam Pickering, who's living in the Bahamas on a yacht somewhere, and he said that he did have full comprehensive insurance, and he also made the point that he wasn't in the car at the time. So we can put that one to bed.
Surely QBE would have been the insurance company.
Of course they would have been. Of course they would have been.
Always stories.
So it's not the last story we're going to hear about Buddy Franklin this year.
Not by a long, long stretch. Was it an underwhelming start to the season, Duck? We only had 37,000 at the Collingwood game on Friday night. We've had games interstate. We haven't had the big MCG blockbuster. Do you like it?
No, I don't, to be honest. It's fallen a little bit flat in terms of people going to the ground. I mean, we expected a bigger crowd on Friday night, and I probably expected a few more at the game yesterday. Didn't go to the other two, obviously.
Yeah, the head of fixturing, Simon Lethlean, off the mic said it's going to get worse next year. We've got the World Cup of Cricket, MCG not available till round 4, but he went a bit of a way to explaining why the season started so early and what their thought process was.
We were keen to start the season earlier to get some content up against our rival codes up north, also to get a second bye for the players. So we started the season a week earlier than normal, and in doing so, without the MCG, needed to sort of maximise Etihad's use, and we've done it across 2 weeks.
I think if they really want to kick it off, though, you've got to get a Melbourne side against a Melbourne side, don't you? Even if you're going to play at Etihad Stadium, it would have probably been a better weekend to have North Melbourne playing against Essendon, because there's more people involved in this town, and I think that would have been a better way to start the season off. By the way, I mean, the NRL had a very soft first weekend of their season as well, so maybe it just takes a while for people to click into the whole idea of going to the footy again, particularly when the weather's still pretty warm.
I was a big fan of the Richmond-Carlton first game. We've had that for, I think we had 7 years in a row or something of that, and yeah, I thought that kicked the season off with a bang.
Danny Frawley played against all three of us, and well known to all of us in his role as the head of the AFL Coaches Association. He's been coming under fire, the big spud in recent times.
He wouldn't like this either.
Caro has taken a long aim at him, says it's time for him to move on, and they need a full-timer, and that he can't juggle both of his roles as a media performer and head of the Coach Association. You agree with that?
Is that in a nutshell, though, that they believe... Is this the other coaches saying to Danny that you either give up your media or you become the coach's man? Is that what they're saying?
Pretty much. And I think David Parkin is the president of the Coach Association. He released a statement today saying everything will be reviewed and come June we will announce new protocols going forward. And that is the story. We caught up with Danny. Tom Brown again was on the job, and he had this to say to Talking Footy.
There's been a couple of opinions on that, Tom. I'm really passionate about the association, as our members are, as the board are. So everyone's entitled to their opinion, Tom, and that's what makes our game so great.
So you want to continue?
Yes, I'd love to be able to continue.
What do you think? What do you think, Das? I mean, is it a volunteer's job, the coach's coach?
No, it's a paid role and an important role. The coaches have come together as a collective. They're funded by the AFL.
But he's a very busy man, Spud. Surely, is this something that he doesn't need to do? I mean...
He loves doing it.
He loves doing it?
He said he wants to do it.
Is it a well-paid job?
I'm not sure how well he gets remunerated, Spud, but I think if he's passionate about it, and he's been in the chair before.
Yeah. In all seriousness, he's had a pretty difficult year. There's been a couple of really big issues around football, hasn't there, in terms of Essendon and supporting the Essendon assistant coaches, and then obviously a number of coaches got sacked. Last year we had the investigation into Melbourne's tanking as well, and he was offering a lot of support at that time for Dean Bailey and others involved in that. So there has been a number of huge issues. So I was a bit surprised to hear that within that article, Caro referring to the fact that some of the coaches weren't happy with the way he had represented certain coaches over the last 12 months.
Hair's gone very, very grey for Spud as well. It might be a sign.
You know him better than I do. How will he take that?
Horrendously. Yeah. No, he won't be happy at all. Hey, after the break, we're going to grill you, Watto, about the rumours circulating at the Essendon Football Club. We want to find out if the Duck is heading on stage with Stephen Dunk. That's coming up next on Talking Footy.
We're talking footy. We're talking footy.
Welcome back to Talking Footy. Tim Watson and Wayne Carey are here. And a story around the Melbourne Football Club that was released that Mitch Clark has been granted indefinite leave, boys, from the Demons and won't be returning any time soon. Paul Roos tonight had this to say about Mitch Clark and his future coming up.
Look, only that we're looking after him. I mean, I'm not comfortable talking specifically about his problem because it's up to Mitch to talk about that, but we're just 100% behind him. Yeah, we understand he's got some problems at the moment and we're working through it, the medical staff are. And well, footy's irrelevant at the moment. It's just getting him healthy, getting him in a good place, and hopefully he's back at the footy club as soon as he can. But we haven't really got a time frame on that.
Yeah, echo the sentiments of Paul Roos. What caught your eye?
Robbo. saying there, nor we should. Isn't he the bloke that wrote the article about all the Essendon players?
Yeah.
Was that a breach of privacy in some way?
Just a tad.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, so not happy with that. What else?
Difference is Roosie sitting in front of him.
Yeah, well, that's probably the difference. But
do you think he got that wrong naming the Essendon players?
Absolutely wrong. Yeah, no, there's a lot of journalists around this town that knew a lot of that story, and they chose not to. I know the Age newspaper knew the names way back in August last year, September last year, and they chose not to.
Might talk to you about Essendon very shortly.
I mean, we don't know what's going on with Mitch, and our wishes go out to him. Hope he's all right. But I guess from a football perspective, it's another mistake or another problem for the Melbourne Football Club because they've spent a lot of money. They gave away a draft pick,
pick 12,
pick 12, reportedly. $700,000 a year. So, and now Hogan is injured. I mean, they've just had some bad luck. Dawes is another one that right now is injured. Doesn't look like he'll be back for a while. So all of a sudden they've gone from what was going to be quite a potent forward line to not having any of them.
Yeah, the great white hope is Jesse Hogan. Tom Brown caught up with him today, and this is what he had to say.
It's coming along well. Probably still 2 to 3 weeks. That's at best, but at the moment, still don't know. It's still very symptomatic, so hopefully sooner rather than later. But there's no real, time frame. So hopefully, around 3 or 4, hopefully. But yeah, not too sure.
Very non-committal, Jesse Hogan.
We're talking about a back injury with him, aren't we?
Yeah.
Did not sound confident though, did he?
No, I mean when he says 2 or 3 weeks. But look, if you associate with the Melbourne Football Club and you've got a kid and he's a prodigious talent, you're not going to be pushing him out there until he's 100% fit because he can play. It's just a matter of making sure that when he gets there, he's going to be in the best condition. He can be confident.
Horrible news though for Melbourne supporters, as you said, with 3 big forwards in doubt heading into their first game of the season. We've got 5 more games still to play out in round 1 on Thursday. It will be Geelong and the Adelaide Crows down there at Geelong, and the North Melbourne Essendon game on Friday night. Looking forward to that one as well.
Yeah, both big games. Looking forward to the Thursday night game down there, but the big one for us, Timmy, will be Friday night. Both old sides, and let's be honest, both a fair bit riding on this game because everyone's saying that the Kangaroos are top, maybe top 4, certainly top 8, and the Bombers made the finals last year, so to see how they bounce back from that.
You're pretty raw before when you heard Mark Robinson there alongside Paul Roos. The 12 players that were named, and Job has been out there because he effectively named himself, but what sort of effect has that had on those guys? We hear it's been pretty devastating for them.
Well, look, I don't know because I haven't spoken to them, but I can only assume, having spoken to other people, that it had a devastating effect, but not only on those individuals, but also their families as well. Now, it is raw because he's contradicting himself. I mean, he's so inconsistent in what he believes by saying, OK, well, we won't talk about Mitch Clark, that's private, but this other stuff for some reason isn't private. And I don't know how he can justify that in his own mind. But, Essendon have had to deal with those things. They're still having to deal with the uncertainty of what the Asada investigation will ultimately do or where it will end up. And, I think they do a great job of being able to get on with their job of playing footy and training and all those sorts of things, but it's still very much in the back of their minds.
I love the rumour mill. Do you like the rumour mill, Darcy?
I do. You can't avoid it. Have you got one quickly before the break?
Well, I've been involved in a couple. So I
Really?
think there's a big rumour at the moment about Bomber Thompson and James Hird.
Well, somebody asked me about this the other day. All I can say, and I can look straight down the camera and say this, I was talking to James Hird the other day. In the conversation, we're talking about Bomber Thompson, and nothing could be further from the truth in regards to the way that conversation went about what was going on there at the moment.
All right, we've knocked one on the head. After the break, no one is safe, myself included, in our new segment, Say That Again. And before that, we've got footy covered on Channel 7 this weekend.
We're talking footy.
Welcome back to Talking Footy. At the end of each show, we're going to play this little segment. Now, it's been inspired by Luke Darcy in his interview with Dean Robinson. It goes a little bit something like this.
How did this get through? Say that again.
Play that again. Now, this is the first one this week. OK, I've spent hours on this over the weekend. The first one this week is Derm's article in the Herald Sun at the weekend. We've been promised a hard-hitting article and he's been able to deliver. This is what he's had to say about the Hawks' slide in season 2014. Well, absolutely
he's
nothing.
Not happy at all.
Here it is. Here's his top 8. OK, he's got Sydney, Fremantle, Geelong, Collingwood. Ahead of Hawthorn.
Turn it up.
Say that again.
Say that again.
Say that again.
This went to air on Saturday after Collingwood had been belted as well.
Okay, how's the new segment going so far?
Probably not as sharp.
I need some work on this segment, but here's our next nomination. Nate Fyfe wearing the sub-vest at the weekend. Say that again. I mean, here's a bloke. He's been the absolute best player almost for 3 years. I'm not taking that. I'm not taking that. Yes, you are. No, I'm not. Yes, you are. Put it on. We're going to put you on ice for the rest of the night.
He did not want that, did
not
he?
happy.
You're kidding, not the red vest.
What do you got for us?
Hundreds of tweets coming through, and one that's taken my eye. I think we need a little close-up on my friend there, Tim Watson. Tim Watson looking very Warden Norton on the short shake rejection tonight at Talking Footy, # Talking Footy. Thanks to Thomas LM. Lots on your hair, Doug. Is it real?
It's real.
It's real.
And I've got wrinkles.
No, you haven't.
75% of our Twitter followers think the GWS will win a flag before the Gold Coast.
Yeah, and 85% thinks that new segment at the end of the show is a great idea.
It might be the end of it. We're going to have some fun. We're going to be talking footy. We'll see you next Monday at 7:30 on Talking Footy.